The concept of Marxism is one that I find troublesome. In physics, for example, there's nothing like Einsteinism, because Einstein isn't a god who you worship. Rather, he's a human being who had important things to say, and like every other human being, made mistakes. So you learn from what he had to say, and you disregard his mistakes. Now, Marxism, the concept, in my view, belongs to the history of organized religion. It's a kind of worship of an individual that makes no sense. If you look at Marx himself and other people who've been working in that tradition, you learn what's valuable, you disregard what's wrong. And then after that, we just go and look. So, for example, take, say, socialism. Marx had almost nothing to say about it. I mean, if you read, I'm not a great Marx specialist, but as far as I understand, and I've read a fair amount, there are a few scattered sentences in Marx's writings about socialism. He's a theorist of capitalism. He was a theorist, basically, of 19th century capitalism, perfectly naturally. And he developed a sort of an abstract model of the capitalist system and its properties, from which I think there's a lot to learn. How much and any intelligent person should read it and learn what you can from it, as you learn from others. To assume that it offers a doctrine for today makes no sense. I can't imagine that Marx would have believed that. He also wrote important things about the contemporary affairs, for example, about the British in India. Certainly worth reading, but if we were still repeating those things now, civilization would be dead. We should have learned something in the last 100 years. Yes, there's contributions, as there is from the rest of our cultural tradition, and you learn from them what's important, and you disregard what's not useful.
Attention all planets of the Solar Federation, this is the Anti-Marxist Magnum.
Alright folks, welcome to episode number 2 of the Anti-Marxist Magnum. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Last week we laid out the history of Marxism from Marx to modern day Seattle and New York, but today we're getting specific. We're talking about the American labor movement and the century and a half long attempt by Marxists to take it over. So this is a new show, folks, and I've been doing my other show, The Global Reality with Josh Reeves, for almost 20 years. And other than the very beginning days of the show, we never had any sponsors. So this is the first time in 20 years I'm attempting to get sponsors, and the game has changed a lot since last I tried to get sponsors. Back then you just got a hold of a sponsor, made a deal. If you made them some sales, they kept paying you. If you didn't, they didn't pay you anymore. Now, everything's based on CPM. I don't have any fucking CPM. This show is brand new. It's just now starting. So, unless you can show that you have so many listeners, so many subscribers, so many CPM, which we don't have yet because this is only show number 2. I turned 50 this past week, folks. No, I'm starting over from scratch, from zero, at 50 years old. I don't know how many of you quite know what that's like. So, I need all of your help. Spread the word, share, subscribe, like each show I do. We're not going to be able to get any sponsors until we can grow this thing into... It's frustrating. It really is. Because I have no funding, you guys. Believe it or not, it does. None of this is free. It's not free for me to have a roof over your head, just over my head, like it is, just like it isn't for you. You know, I have to be able to eat, live, survive, and still create these episodes. So, until that day, we need support from you, the listener. Dayglow76 at yahoo.com on PayPal if you'd like to donate that way. Reeves Radio, all lowercase, one word, Reeves Radio on the Cash App. And 300 is what we need to raise this week. That we'll have a goal each week here on the show. But you can find all the ways to support our work on the first comment of every video. It'll have everything there. And if you'd like to buy any of the 126 films I've made so far, I've made 29 already this year. 43 last year. Yeah. And while I'm done making the conspiracy films, I am still making, and going to still be making films under my pseudonym, which is Zanzibar McLaren. So film number 2 from Zanzibar McLaren will be coming out very soon. Anyway, but please support our work. Make a donation this week. Help us reach our $300 goal this week for the show. And I've already got the next few episodes written, so I still have to make them, produce them, all that stuff. Alright. So, like I said last week, we talked about the history of Marxism, but here's the one thing people don't understand. American workers have always wanted better wages. That's never changed. Safer working conditions, just a fair shake in general. That's all American workers have ever wanted. But that's not socialism. That's common sense. But Marxists, from the very beginning, saw labor unions not as a means to help the workers, but as a vehicle for their revolution. Thankfully, the American worker never bought it. Go USA. Alright, so let's start in the 19th century, when the first Marxist immigrants showed up on American shores. German refugees from the failed 1848 revolutions. Men like Joseph Weidenmeyer or Frederick Sorge that brought Marxist ideas with them. In 1852, Weidenmeyer started the first Marxist organization in the United States. It was called the American Workers' League. It folded almost immediately because they just couldn't attract any English-speaking members. That became a pattern. In 1864, Marx and Engels launched the first international in Europe. They sent their guy Sorge to New York to set up the American branch. At first, it seemed promising, but there were 22 sections by 1872, but here's where it gets interesting. The American members They weren't the kind of people that Marx liked. They weren't pure proletarians. They were reformers, women's rights activists, people who, actually believed in American democracy, not those who wanted to tear it down. One of them was Victoria Woodhull. She was the first ever woman to run for president, and nobody remembers her. She also published the first American edition of the Communist Manifesto. But she didn't fit in with Marx's mold. She was a stockbroker, a spiritualist, a feminist. Marx and Engels hated her. They called her ridiculous. They pushed her and her followers out of the International. And what happened when Marxists purged the Americans? The first International died in the U.S. within a few years. They would rather lose a whole movement than accept an American-style reformer. That's the kind of dogmatism that we're dealing with these psychos. Now let's fast forward to the 1880s, when the socialist movement got another shot. In 1877, the Socialist Labor Party was formed. And by 1881, they had 24 publications and a growing presence in the unions. They organized German immigrants, Jewish immigrants, Irish workers. They did this in New York, Chicago, Boston. The New York Central Labor Union, which organized the first Labor Day parade in 1882, was heavily influenced by the socialists. But the socialists were split. You had two factions. The Lassalleans believed that the unions were useless, and that workers should focus only on political action and government-run cooperatives. The Marxists believed in both political action and union organizing. The infighting was constant. And while they were fighting each other, the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, was quietly becoming the dominant force in American labor under Samuel Gompers. Gompers was a pragmatist. When asked what labor wanted, he said, to get more. And when asked what then, he said, to get still more. He didn't care about overthrowing capitalism. He cared about wages, hours, and conditions. And American workers loved it. By 1900, the AFL had over 50,000 members. No, I'm sorry. That's an incorrect fact. 500,000 members. 500,000 members in the United States alone. The American Federation of Labor had by 1900. That's no small movement. That's a big deal, especially in 1900. You're talking about a way significantly less populated America during those times. The Socialist Labor Party had maybe 5,000 members. As one historian put it, American socialism was heavily doctrinary and lacked commitments to the labor movement itself. The European socialists had parties that grew alongside the unions. In America, the unions came first. And they didn't want a Marxist priest telling them how to think. No way. That's not America. Well, let's jump again to the 1920s and 30s. The Communist Party, which had split from the Socialists in 1919, decided on a new strategy. To bore and chip away from the establishment from within. They joined the AFL, win elections in the unions, and steer them towards their revolution. It backfired immediately. Take New York's garment workers in 1926. Communist leaders called a strike of 40,000 clockmakers. When management offered a settlement, the communists said no, because they were afraid their own party would accuse them of being soft. The strike dragged on for months. It was lost. The union leadership then purged the communists, and the International Ladies Garment Workers Union became fiercely anti-communist for decades. You gotta love that. I mean, is there anything more American than that? Then the women's labor union, you know, they tried to infiltrate it, turned it into a commie organization. And all it did was make them more anti-communist. That's America, baby. Hell yeah. Or take the textile workers in Gastonia, North Carolina in 1929. The communist-led National Textile Workers Union tried to organize Southern mill workers. That didn't work out either. They were met with mobs, police, gunfire. The strike was crushed. A union activist was murdered. Or take the coal miners. In the 1920s, communists fought John L. Lewis for control of the United Mine Workers. Of course, they lost. Lewis expelled them. Then, the communists formed their own rival union, the National Miners Union. And they led strikes in Pennsylvania and Ohio in 1931. Guess what happened? They lost those too. The company simply recognized the UMW instead. My point here is that every single time that communism and socialism and Marxism have reared their ugly head in the United States, Americans have been smart enough to stamp it out immediately. And I'm just hoping that we still have that same American spirit today, and I believe that we do. By the mid-1930s, the Communist Party was utterly discredited in, most of the organized labor world. The New Deal, not revolution, was what saved American workers. Social Security, the Wagner Act, minimum wage. And the communists didn't build that. The New Deal Democrats did. So here's where I land on all this. The American labor movement was not built by Marxists. It was built by American workers who wanted a fair deal, not a revolution. And every single time that Marxists tried to steer it towards class warfare, they got thrown out. Karl Marx and Engels actually predicted the United States would be the first country to go socialist, but thank God they were wrong. In 1906, a German economist named Werner Sombart famously asked, "Why is there no socialism in the United States?" His answer, "Oh, on the reefs of roast beef and apple pie, socialistic utopias are sent to their doom." Love that. American workers wanted a house, a car, a better life for their kids. They didn't want to be told they were oppressed proletarians who needed the state to save them. Americans don't have that sort of mentality. Well, at least they didn't used to. Some of them do now. That's what the Marxists never understood. They saw workers as their raw material for their ideology and nothing more. And workers saw right through that shit. Right through it. But that doesn't mean the fight is over. No, the fight is just beginning. It's back. Marxists are in our schools, our city councils, our unions more than ever. Adapting, rebranding, and just waiting for a time to strike. But the history is clear. When the American worker has a choice between freedom and collectivism, they choose freedom. Every single time. And that's what we got to stick with. God bless you all for listening. Next week, we're going to look at cultural Marxism and how it infiltrated our universities and changed the way that we talk about everything from race to gender. This is the Anti-Marxist Magnum. Big truths, clear opposition. Until next time, stay free, stay skeptical, and never stop asking questions. God bless you all. I love you. We'll see you next week.